The Caribbean Sea, once a symbol of peace, commerce, and vibrant cultural exchange, now finds itself at the heart of a growing international crisis. What was once a tranquil expanse is now the site of a dangerous and unprecedented standoff between the United States and Venezuela, with warships from both sides locked in a tense face-off. In September 2025, the U.S. Navy intercepted and seized several Venezuelan ships, even firing missiles in a dramatic show of force, an unmistakable escalation that shocked the region and sent ripples across the globe. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro responded swiftly, deploying his navy, mobilizing the armed forces, and rallying the nation in the face of what he called foreign aggression. The Venezuelan military established hundreds of battlefront zones along the coast, fortifying key positions and preparing for any possible incursion. The U.S. claims its actions are part of a broader campaign to target drug smuggling routes in the Caribbean, accusing Venezuela's government of complicity in the international narcotics trade and using these allegations to justify military intervention. Caracas, however, sees this as yet another chapter in a long and troubled history of American interference in its affairs, and views the U.S. actions as a direct threat to its sovereignty and independence, fueling nationalist sentiment across the country. Years of mistrust, failed diplomacy, and deep ideological opposition have now boiled over. The U.S. has never recognized Maduro's presidency as legitimate, and has openly supported opposition leaders, further straining relations and deepening the divide. Now, with missiles fired and ships seized, the risk of open conflict is no longer theoretical. It's imminent, and the world is on edge. The world watches anxiously as the Caribbean becomes a flashpoint for global tensions, with both nations refusing to back down, and the threat of war looming ever closer. Venezuela's geography is its greatest asset, and its curse. With a 2,800-kilometer coastline on the Caribbean and Atlantic, Venezuela is a gateway between North and South America, just 150 kilometers from Florida. Its ports, Puerto Cabello, La Guaira, Maracaibo, are vital for global trade, and the nearby Panama Canal is a lifeline for shipping between continents. Any disruption here could ripple through the world economy. The region is crowded with strategic interests: U.S. territory, Puerto Rico, Dutch islands, Aruba and Curaçao, and a heavy American military presence. For the U.S., instability so close to home is intolerable. For Venezuela, geography is a shield and a bargaining chip. This is why global powers like Russia and China are invested in Venezuela's fate. Whoever controls these waters holds sway over the Americas and beyond. Beneath Venezuela lies the world's largest proven oil reserves, over 300 billion barrels, more than even Saudi Arabia. This immense underground wealth has shaped the nation's destiny for generations, fueling both dreams of prosperity and fierce international competition. Most of this oil is concentrated in the Orinoco Belt, a vast region stretching hundreds of kilometers, rich in heavy crude. Extracting this oil is a technical challenge, requiring advanced technology and significant investment, but the sheer abundance makes it a prize worth pursuing. For decades, oil has been Venezuela's economic backbone, providing the majority of government revenue and shaping its society. It's also been the country's ticket to global influence, making Venezuela a key player in the world energy market. The United States covets this resource, not just for its sheer size but for its strategic proximity. Venezuelan oil can reach Gulf Coast refineries in just a few days, making it far more accessible than oil from the Middle East or other distant regions. Control over Venezuelan oil could dramatically reshape global energy markets. It would reduce U.S. dependence on Middle Eastern oil, shift the balance of power away from OPEC and Russia, and potentially lower global energy prices. Yet, years of mismanagement, corruption, and harsh international sanctions have crippled Venezuela's oil industry. Production has plummeted, infrastructure has decayed, and the nation's once booming oil sector now struggles to survive, though the reserves themselves remain untouched, waiting for a new chapter. For Washington, a friendly government in Caracas would mean open access to this strategic resource. For President Maduro and his allies, keeping the oil out of U.S. hands is a matter of national pride and survival, fueling a high-stakes geopolitical standoff. Oil is the prize at the heart of this conflict, a resource so valuable, it could tip the balance of global power for decades to come, shaping the future of nations and the fate of millions. Venezuela was once among Latin America's wealthiest nations, its prosperity built on oil. The country's vast reserves made it a global energy powerhouse, and for decades, oil revenues funded ambitious social programs, modern infrastructure, and a thriving middle class. But dependence on a single commodity proved disastrous when oil prices crashed, exposing deep economic and political flaws. The sudden loss of income sent shockwaves through every sector, revealing how little had been invested in diversifying the economy or building resilience. Hugo Chávez's socialist revolution brought initial hope, promising equality and opportunity for all. However, sweeping nationalizations and the alienation of foreign investors set the stage for collapse, as industries faltered and capital fled the country. Under Nicolás Maduro, hyperinflation and shortages devastated daily life. Basic goods became luxuries, and millions struggled to survive. As the crisis deepened, families were forced to leave everything behind, creating a refugee crisis across South America. Infrastructure crumbled, protests erupted in the streets, and the government responded with force, deepening the divide between leaders and citizens. The social fabric of the nation began to unravel. Over 7 million Venezuelans have left, straining neighboring countries, and turning Venezuela into a cautionary tale of resource mismanagement and political turmoil. The exodus continues, with families seeking safety and opportunity elsewhere. The nation's fall from prosperity to crisis is a stark warning of how quickly fortunes can change. Once vibrant cities now stand as reminders of lost potential and broken dreams. The economic collapse fuels the current conflict, as desperation and political survival drive decisions on both sides. Venezuela's story is a powerful lesson in the dangers of over-reliance and unchecked power. As Venezuela's crisis deepened, the U.S. imposed sweeping sanctions, aiming to force Maduro from power. These measures targeted oil, banking, shipping, and top officials, isolating Venezuela from Western finance. The sanctions crippled the economy, but failed to topple Maduro, who tightened his grip and blamed U.S. economic warfare. Cut off from the West, Venezuela turned to China, Russia, and Iran for lifelines. Oil for loans, military aid, and technical support. India, and even some U.S. companies like Chevron, have continued limited dealings, balancing energy needs with political pressure. This network of alliances has kept Maduro afloat and given Russia and China a foothold in America's backyard. The sanctions have backfired in some ways, entrenching Maduro and drawing in U.S. adversaries. The standoff is now global, with Venezuela at the center of a new web of rivalries. The U.S. has long considered Latin America its sphere of influence, but Venezuela has upended this order. By inviting Russia, China, and Iran into the region, Maduro has transformed Venezuela into a battleground for global power. Russian military advisors, Chinese loans, and Iranian drones now bolster Venezuela's defenses. Any U.S. intervention risks confrontation with nuclear-armed rivals. For Moscow and Beijing, supporting Maduro is a way to challenge U.S. dominance and tie up American resources. The Monroe Doctrine's grip is slipping, as adversaries operate openly in the Caribbean. Venezuela's crisis is now an international one, with the stakes far beyond its borders. The conflict is no longer just about Venezuela, it's about the future balance of power in the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela's territorial dispute with Guyana over the oil-rich Essequibo region adds another flashpoint. The discovery of massive offshore oil reserves has turned this long-dormant border feud into a high-stakes contest. Maduro's government has escalated claims, holding a referendum and threatening to annex the region, alarming neighbors and oil companies. ExxonMobil's involvement, and U.S. support for Guyana, has internationalized the dispute. For Venezuela, controlling Essequibo means new oil wealth and strategic advantage. For the U.S., it's about protecting allies and energy interests. The standoff risks drawing in regional and global powers, making the Caribbean even more volatile. The Essequibo dispute is now deeply tied to the broader U.S.-Venezuela conflict. One border crisis could ignite another, with unpredictable consequences. For Maduro, the standoff with the US is more than geopolitics. It's a tool for survival. By framing the crisis as a fight against imperialism, he rallies nationalist sentiment and distracts from Venezuela's internal woes. Mobilizing the military and militias, Maduro unites his base and justifies crackdowns on dissent. Political opposition is painted as treasonous, making it harder for rivals to organize. The conflict allows Maduro to tighten control, even as the country suffers. For the US, intervention becomes riskier, with the threat of a drawn-out, bloody conflict. Maduro's defiance boosts his image at home and among allies, complicating Washington's options. The crisis is as much about domestic power as it is about international rivalry. The US-Venezuela standoff has pushed the region to the brink, with no easy solutions in sight. A prolonged, low-intensity conflict could destabilize trade, fuel migration, and risk accidental escalation. Deeper involvement by Russia, China, or Iran could turn the Caribbean into a new front in global rivalry. Oil markets and regional stability hang in the balance. Any disruption could send shockwaves worldwide. The fate of the Essequibo region remains uncertain, with the potential for a separate conflict. Only diplomacy offers a path to peace, but it would require real concessions from both sides. For now, mistrust prevails, and the risk of wider conflict looms. The world waits, hoping for de-escalation before the Caribbean's crisis spirals out of control.